Trust. This is an important one for a whole bunch of reasons. In order for AI to be useful, we need to know if and when to trust it. As you've followed us throughout the last year or even longer, one of the key questions we've had is whether you can trust the output of the AI. Do we know how it's making its predictions? And especially with generative AI, everybody's talked about hallucinations. So we understand that there's a question about the factual accuracy that's happening in these tools, and that is by design. So it's not something that you can hear vendors talking about and model developers talking about reducing the number of hallucinations, but the general creativity that is the purpose of generative AI will lead itself to making hallucinations. We think that we're going to move beyond that to sort of two different key questions that are top of mind right now in January. One is, does an internal AI that you've created inside a company have access to the data I need it to in order to make those make good predictions and create good relevant content? That is twofold, right? You could think about, does the internal AI that I've trained and fine-tuned, has it been fine-tuned on all of the information that's available to it across the enterprise that I need access to? Does it have access to all of the data? Does it have access to the data in countries where we've fragmented data because of data governance laws in different countries? Does the tool have access to the data that I need because of my data governance access, right? Or is it been trained just on the generic data that everyone in the company has access to? This kind of question is really challenging inside of the enterprise. Second one is also thinking about how open and sort of consumer available tools are providing, what kind of answers they're providing. And the one that's showing up a lot right now is this embedding of citations in generated responses. This is coming up in what's being described as generative AI search tools. You've probably seen this in Bing Chat if you've tried it. The other tool that's making a lot of noise right now is Perplexity. What they've done is they're basically trying to build a tool that can go generate a response and provide citations that basically tap into a search engine to respond back and show you give you some citations and references that you can go look at. The problem is that these two systems are disconnected. The generation is text off of with the training data, and the references are going out and finding things in the search world. The data on the slide here is quite interesting. This is a research paper that came out of Stanford, I believe, and it looked at evaluating verifiability in these generative search engines. It did look at Bing, Neva, Perplexity, UChat. This is almost a year old, but it's really interesting research, and we're going to consider how to figure out how to follow this and update it. But here you go, just above 50% of sentences that were generated were fully supported with citations. So you can see an answer and you can see some citations, but then you have to look at it and say, well, how much of what has been generated actually is supported by the citations? This research found that it was basically about half. So half of the answer that's been generated is supported, half isn't. The other is that only about 3/4 of the citations actually support the associated sentence. And you've seen a lot of anecdotes around this where it gives you an answer and it gives you a citation, and then you go look at the citation and you're like, yeah, but that citation doesn't have anything to do with what was in the sentence. This is great, very helpful research that says that 3/4 of the time it supports the associative sentence, which also means that 1/4 of the time it doesn't. So you have this weird mental model of looking at these answers with citations, and we think, great sentence, citation, that must mean it's real, I should trust it, but you really can't. And you wouldn't know that until you actually dug into it all.
And at the beginning of the year, there was quite a lot of publicity over Bing giving recommendations for a vacuum cleaner and citing a product review that actually said the complete opposite.
Yeah, it said it was total trash.
Yeah, and that continues. It's not as bad as it was, but that is unfortunately the reality of generative AI.
Yeah, just recently, if you go back through my LinkedIn feed few weeks ago at least, I posted some images from testing Perplexity, and I went through and I asked it about our old business intelligentsia research. I said, what happened to it? And it starts off with the answer that actually is relevant to us, and then it finished the answer about something completely and utterly different, had absolutely nothing to do with us and nothing. Now, we were small, but the fact that it gave an answer and provided citations was really misleading. And so what I'm worried about right now is this excitement over these tools where people are going and asking relatively obvious questions about relatively obvious things that are easy for these tools to figure out. And they're in that 25% where the citations support the associated sentence. When you dig deeper and you're trying to get to something more challenging, I'm betting that that's more of where you end up in that 3/4 of the time where it's just not even relevant.
Yeah. And search
or
is
opposite way. Sorry, I did 75 versus 25.
search is very much a place where we want accuracy. We don't want it to make things up. It's different than using ChatGPT to help you write an essay. Or a social media post, and there's a lot of the narrative in some corners, influential corners, is I don't use Google anymore. I just love Perplexity, and we're saying time out.
Yeah,
would be how to put that.